Welcome to Rock That Relationship, a podcast about all things relationship with Corey and Tracy.
Now let's get real and start creating relationships that rock.
Hello and welcome to Rock That Relationship. We are here in this season talking about stuckness, how to get unstuck. And this is all part of this idea about, maybe we're stuck in a job or we're stuck in a relationship or we're stuck in a situation or we're stuck living somewhere we don't want to live. We can be stuck in lots of places. But part of the relationship with ourselves is figuring out, are we stuck? Are we choosing to stay? Maybe why do we stay stuck? How do we unravel that? How do we unpack that? How do we unstick? So,
how many different analogies can you come up with? Or is that a metaphor, an analogy?
I don't know, right?
Or is it a simile? Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. Well,
yeah, that's a good question.
As. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to figure that out.
And now they're not really analogies. Metaphors?
They're more metaphors.
Or are just they're the same.
Examples.
It all means examples.
Yeah,
they all mean the same. Yeah.
Yes. Pretty
Good
much
job.
basically what we're saying is you can get stuck anywhere, anytime, doing anything. So, and this is part of the Rock That relationship with yourself. Maybe you're trying to unstick yourself from your own self-limiting beliefs, or maybe you're unsticking from another person, or you're unsticking from expectations. But that's what we're going to talk about today is the reasons we stay stuck. So let's talk about a few of them. Okay? There's a handful of them that are really the prominent ones about why we stay stuck. There's actually, in my notes, 6 of them. So let's go through each of them and talk about them. And we can share some examples and about being stuck and about maybe getting unstuck, and kind of confronting those. So Tracy, the first one we have, and this is the one that a lot of people talk about, and it seems to be one of the most prominent ones, is we stay stuck because of fear of failure. So like the person who, is in a job they don't like, they want to go out on their own and work for themselves. And they end up not because they're afraid that they're going to fail, and then they somehow will lose money, they'll lose an opportunity, they can't get their old job back, they lose their self-worth, it's an ego thing, they're just afraid of failing. Have you ever had an experience where you felt stuck and you didn't move and get yourself out of that situation because you were afraid that what you moved to, you might fail in?
Yes, 100%. I think that defines my entire life.
Yeah.
What
is it more for you? Is it more like an ego thing and self-worth, or is it more like losing money or an opportunity or something more tangible?
No, I have good ego. I have a strong ego. I don't fear. I don't mind I don't mind starting a new job. I've done that pretty much every year. And I don't mind people have a real hard time with new jobs because they feel like they don't know what they're doing. They're embarrassed, all that. I don't care. So I'm new. I got to learn. That doesn't bother me. I don't think I'm incompetent. I think I'm very smart. But when I think of fear of failure and why haven't I done my dream things? I think it's more, my particular one is do I have the skills to really take, if I were this coaching business, I'm starting a coaching business. Do I have the marketing skills? Do I have all that? And do I want to do that? So mine is more fear of failure of I guess my entire adult life I've learned in structured environments, school, then the police department, where there's a very clear training program. And so to go out on my own is frightening, right? I mean, I've done it, and then I just mess around and travel and do all kinds of things and then realize I'm broke and have to go get a job. So I think, for people who are truly stuck, they might have kids, they might have other things that they just can't, right? And you're the expert at, start your side hustle while you're doing your regular job so that you don't have all that, insecurity, financial insecurity. So I think when you're directing me or other people, you're addressing the financial piece, right? That big fear is not being able to support yourself. you know, or leaving a job that then you were like, uh-oh, I want that job back.
Right. The regret, or it doesn't work out and you don't have any other job options. You have to go and become underemployed or take less hours or go to a lower level than you were. I've seen that happen where people have left to out on their own and then they're like, oh, I better come back. And then now they can't get what they had before.
Right.
Takes them 5 years to get that back. And those are true fears. So it's, you know, that's the thing.
Yeah, those are legitimate.
None of these are irrational fears. And same thing with ego. I mean, that's, for me, I don't have a fear of failure of the same way, like about taking risks. I do slow risks, like you said, starting a side hustle while you're full-time employed or having, you know, backups of backups. So, I mean, I don't feel like I end up having a fear of failure in my professional life at all. I just put it out there and whatever lands. And I even did that before I became more established. You know, like right now I'm established and I have, the more established you are, the more risk you can take. But even in my earlier years, I was putting myself out there and just like, just taking a chance. The fear of failure that I've had is I've stayed in some relationships too long. And that's not because I'm afraid. I mean, a little bit is like I'm afraid of letting go of something and then not finding something as good as what I had. But that's not really it, because if it's not working, it's not working. And it's nothing against the other person. It isn't working. And I've had a couple of them where I had one where I stayed for a really long time. And I was afraid of leaving the relationship because I thought that, how come I would fail at this relationship? Because that's what some people call it. Like, they're like, I've had a
What do you mean, how come? Like,
why am I failing again?
If you leave, I see. Yeah. And also, is that internal, or is that like you're anticipating the judgment of others looking at you and saying, oh my gosh, what a failure?
Well, a little bit of both, right?
Can't stay. They say it to Taylor Swift too.
Yeah, like you can, and that's why there's this phrase, like, I come from a series of failed relationships. I have failed marriage. And we've talked about this in other episodes, is it's not really failed if you feel like you learned something from it, you got something from it. And even if you didn't, but you're leaving it, the failure is staying in an unhappy situation. But part of it is like, at some point in time, you're like, gosh, how many relationships can I screw up? Or how many relationships are not going my way? And it's like, even if it's not my fault, right? Like, it's just like, oh, I'm exhausted. And so it's like, it's better to just stay than say, I failed again. This was not the right fit for me. And so I'm doing way better at that. I'm not doing that anymore, but I've done that in my past, particularly with relationships. And I've done that a little bit with jobs too, where it's like, again, I'm not worried about losing the money, but I'm worried about the reputational loss. It's an ego thing. Like, I'm afraid that if I leave this job and I'm not as successful in my next endeavor, that my reputation will take a hit. So those are things that I really think about.
I'm just thinking about that. That's why I've become quiet. Like, I'm thinking.
I almost thought your video froze for a second. I was like, Tracy's.
No, I didn't freeze. I was thinking, like, have I ever cared about my reputation? I mean, people say, oh my God, your resume, like, you look crazy. But that's why I get job interviews, because I have such an interesting and varied background. So it can be a cutting edge sword or double-edged sword, right? Like, because but your profession is different. I mean, professor profession has always been about long-term, right? Tenure, and you're in a way different profession than I am.
Right. Like, if I left being a full professor right now, I would not get that job back.
Right.
And that's not just like a loss of opportunity or money. It's a loss of title. It's a loss of legitimacy. It's because being a full professor means that you have gone through the tenure process, you become an associate professor, and then you've been promoted again. There's a signal to the world about how credentialed you are in my field with that rank. And if I were to leave that to go off on my own and just do something willy-nilly, be the president of my own coaching LLC or whatever, even as important and profound as that might be, my reputation changes. And am I ready to deal with that? So I stay, and I'm thankful I'm not just staying in my professor job because of that, because I actually really enjoy it and I enjoy the institution I work for. But that
most
is
professors
reality.
Do, right?
But some feel really
There's
trapped and
a lot
really
of stability
stuck.
in your, really, because
Well,
the way that when I went to college, you know, I was with foreign language professors mostly because that's what I was studying. They were all very happy, and that's where they wanted to be. And for foreign language stuff, there's really nothing else. There's not other jobs you can have. Like, and this attack on higher education now is appalling in this country. And like, it's an attack. It's as if people are saying that these things aren't as valuable because these people aren't money motivated, because that's not the motivation in teaching. Not that teachers shouldn't be paid more, because they all should. But like, it's like people are professors because they want to have that contact with students, freedom to think, freedom to like study stuff, right? I mean, that was the whole point of tenure, was so that professors could teach stuff that maybe wasn't popular, so they wouldn't get fired, right? And so it was a protective measure. But I did not experience a lot of stuck professors, and I was pretty close to most of my professors in college.
Well, I mean, the higher education landscape is so different now. I mean, we're told what we can teach. We're told what we can't talk about. We're told words we can and cannot say. We've been given 3 times as many students as were in classrooms in the 1990s for less pay. The grading has gotten out of hand. I mean, there's just so many things we're contending with: the growth of AI, student issues, dealing with the pandemic and having to switch with like no training and things. I mean, it's a lot. And when you look at that, and that was the same with like K-12 teachers too. But so I don't think that, I haven't met a ton of stuck professors, but I feel like there's a number of them that are in my age group, which is about 10 years out from retirement. They're like, what do I do? I can't get something else at this rank.
Right.
And so I would have to go out on my own. And so there is an element of like this, we've talked about it in another episode, is this idea of like kind of circumstantial stuckness, right? Like if I didn't have this higher ed landscape thing, I would feel less stuck, right? Like not me, but just like somebody might say that, like the landscape makes it like that. But I do think that it comes back to this idea of not just like fear of failure, but really this idea of like losing your reputation. Like I've seen so many of my friends leave their professor jobs behind to go work well, some of them are like, maybe, I did like the stability of that, right? Some of them have gone into corporate where they make 3 times as much as they were before. Because, I teach leadership. I could go work in HR somewhere and make 3 times what I'm making. Some of them have gone out on their own. Some of them have completely changed industries altogether. So, but it's this idea of this kind of reputational cost. And that's what drives me. It's a reputational cost that drives me. I'm not afraid of losing money or opportunities, even when I didn't have any money or opportunities, But
I think that's the thing. You have to look at if it's a job, right, or a relationship. Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Is there going to be an end to this, like a natural end for some reason, right? So if you're at 25 years and you're just had it, well, you only have 6 months more to go or whatever, right? So stick it out, and then you can, change your life after that. Like there's some things worth sticking out for. Yep. And, a few years, like you've already been there for 25 years, you can handle it. And then there are other things where it's like, do I even really want this? And when the profession changes underneath your feet, that's, I think, really, it's scary and it's sad. Right. And I do think, that the professors I was with in the 90s, it's probably, a totally different world than what you're dealing with now. But when I think of it and I think, I want to be a professor, I want to be a teacher or whatever, I'm thinking of people that I knew from, the early 90s, right? Yep. I would never want to be a law school professor ever, as long as I live, unless it was something where I didn't have to grade their awful essays. But, because law school essays are 12 pages long, and you're talking 100 plus students per class. So,
right, exactly.
But the thing is, like, I think that's why I also think coaching helps, or talking to people, or making lists, or really looking at what am I really unhappy with?
Right. Do I really need to get unstuck? Or like we've said before, do I need to change my mentality? Can I eke out those 6 months to get to my retirement? Can I change something within my job structure or in my relationship to be happy so that I don't feel stuck? But I also think the important point is to figure out, like when we say why we stay stuck, is to understand what is holding us. Like, how are we defining what stuck is? And for me, like I said, it's much more of a reputational cost in my own perceptions of myself. Even with leaving a relationship, it's like, I did it again. I couldn't keep a relationship, even though I know better than to tell myself those messages. But for you, it might be, that you don't have the skill set. I don't ever have that fear. because I'll just go learn it. And I have but like it's different for both of us. And if we're being held back by different things and we're being stuck by different things, the way that you become unstuck also is different. You might go get skill training, whereas I might, do some therapy and process and talk about letting go of my need for affirmation, right? Like it's going to look different.
And some people are good at that. And some people know they're not, like gaining new skills. I'm thinking, I constantly see these ads on Facebook about AI, use AI, use AI. So maybe I need to start using AI and not be always be behind,
Right. Go. Yeah. Pre-skill, like get the skill before you think you even need it. Like I was taking HTML classes, excuse me, in the 1990s. Like right when the internet came out, I was like, and this was like code, like massive code. And now it's really helpful that I know it, because even though I use like WordPress website, I have to go into the behind the scenes and do HTML, but I got ahead of it. And now I can do my own websites and stuff. But okay, let's transition to another one, because I think this one sort of relates to what we're talking about, but is slightly different. You and I were talking about this the other day, and we might have been out hiking or on the phone or who knows what we were doing, talking for the zillionth time during the day. But it's this idea of not taking that chance to get out of a situation that you're in because you're afraid of pursuing a dream that you have, because you're afraid that if it doesn't work out, you will be dreamless. So for instance, let me clarify. So say that you are, you're working in this job and you've been trying to write a book on the side and you have very little time and you're not writing the book. And then you quit the job and you're like, I'm going to be a full-time writer and I'm going to publish this book. I am so excited. But then you're like, wait a minute. What if I quit my job and then my book isn't good? I don't make any money and my dream doesn't come true. And then all of a sudden I don't have that what if in the future. Like we put something on a pedestal, which gives us kind of a beacon to move towards. So being that full-time published author is like a beacon for somebody, and they spend their whole lives saying, well, if I only had more time, I could be an author. If I only did this, I could be this author. And then once you give yourself the opportunity to do it and it doesn't turn out the way you want, your dream is gone. And that is really hard for some people to do.
Or that they do it and then they don't do it as well as they imagined they would, and their dream is like trash.
Right. Or they don't like it.
They don't like it.
They don't like it. They're like, ugh, why would I want to write all day? That's 8 hours of writing. I'm exhausted. It took all the fun out of it. It's, but whatever the fear is that the fear is that the dream is not going to be what you imagined it to be. And then all of a sudden that will no longer be a dream, and that you won't have another dream to replace it. Because now you're like this full-time author, or maybe you don't like it, or maybe you're not good at it, and then all of a sudden you don't have another dream. You're like, what do I do if I'm not an author? I don't know. What's the next thing?
Well, that's why we should always have multiple dreams and multiple ideas for our life. But this is interesting because I literally, before we got on this call, this podcast, I had a call with a friend / colleague, and she's not a lawyer, but everyone's encouraging her to be one, and that's kind of her idea. And there's a mid-level kind of thing that they do in Arizona called a legal paraprofessional, but she'd have to leave the state that she lives in, where she's living near her parents who are aging. She's living near close friends. And we started talking about all this. And I'm like, but why would you come here just to have this different job that you may not even know that you like, when you know that your life where you're at is really happy? Be with your people. I'll tell you, as an older person, community is more important to me than anything else. The rest of it, I can figure out. I can have a job, I can do this. But I said, you're going to uproot your life, possibly make your marriage worse, leave your parents, leave your friends to come here and try and to study something that you don't even know if you're going to like. I mean, that's a huge risk. And she said, I'm the only person that said that to her, because when you talk to people in a certain profession, there's a lot of ego on their part involved, and pushing and you have to achieve. And I think in society, and you're like this as well, achievement oriented. I'm not. I don't give a shit. I don't care. I could care less what I achieve in my life. I want to be happy. That's it. And talking to somebody who's actually already happy, and then having other people encourage her to uproot her life, where she knows 90% of her life is going to be unhappy, but she'll achieve this one thing. I think that people really have to think about that, she feels stuck in a job. or she feels that she's in a job where other people are higher, ranking, and she could achieve that rank, but at what cost?
Well, and maybe her internal drive. I mean,
it's not though, because she told me that everything I was saying was what she was feeling, but I was the only person who said it to her.
See, I mean, I think that's one thing. If someone else is telling you that you're stuck, I mean, that's different than feeling like you're stuck. Like if she wanted this so badly and it meant giving up a lot of stuff to go do it, that's one thing. But if she's not,
that's what I'm saying. That's a real dream that people have based on I think comparing themselves and their lives to others. And they give up all this stuff to pursue something that then ends up turning out not to be as good as the life that they had before that they could have made a few tweaks. I think there's a lot of BS out there about what you have to be and achieving.
Well, and again,
I think that keeps people really stuck.
And I think the point that you're hitting on that resonates with me is the part about how other people are driving those dreams. They're the ones pushing for it. Again, there was a point in time when I was working. I had left the University of Arizona and I was working for this company called OrgSync, and I worked for them for about a year, and it wasn't a temporary job. I could have been there for my whole career if I wanted. Online, paid more than I was getting paid at U of A. I mean, it was great. I worked at home. My daughter was just starting kindergarten. I could spend a ton of time with her. It was lovely. I was in a brand new relationship. Everything was perfect, right? But there was this professor job that showed up in Dayton, Ohio, and I'd have to move there. How in the world was I going to move there? I'd have to take a pay cut. I would have to move to Ohio where I don't know anybody. And I'd have to leave my kid, leave my partner, leave my house, leave my cats, and go uproot my entire life to start over. It was nobody else's dream but mine. That's the difference about what we're talking about. It was nobody else's dream but mine. But I knew that I would be happier and less stuck in the long run. I would have been mad at myself for not taking the opportunity. So I did. And I moved to Ohio, and I lived in this nasty student housing, and I had to dig my car out of the snow. And I taught a class on a Monday night that ended at 10:30 at night. And I thought, why am I doing this? I would go home to this empty apartment. My kid, my partner were at home. Everything I had, my whole community was at home. And I did this. And guess what? I did it. And then I got tenure. And then I moved back, and now I live in Arizona. I'm a full professor.
But your situation is different because your kid moved to Northern California. So
no, she didn't. She did not. She did not. She moved there 3 years after I took this job. So she moved in 2018. I was there in 2015. So I spent 3 years away from her where she was still living in Arizona. So it was very difficult. It was very challenging. I'd fly back and forth. The point I'm making is that was my dream. No one else told me that's what my dream looked like.
Right.
No one else told me I should do that. So I did uproot those things only to create better. Now, for the lady you're talking about, if this is her dream to go do that, fantastic, go do it. But if other people are kind of pushing it on her or giving her their opinion about what she should be doing, so much so that it drives her to leave something she's happy in.
Well, it's not necessarily that other people are pushing it on there. It's comparing and saying okay, I mean, that's why I went to law school. Because I dated 2 attorneys, and I'm like, God damn, if they went to law school, I can too. Law school was never my dream. I did it because I was like, well, they're no smarter than me. I mean, I had applied to law school before I went to the police department, but when I was a police officer and I hung around a lot of lawyers, there was a lot of looking down on me because I didn't have that degree, right? There was a lot of that. I never let it affect me, but I saw it. And I was like, you know what? I'll go to law school. And I did. But I didn't have to uproot my life to do that,
Yeah, but
I didn't have to leave my community. I didn't have to. It's every person's decision. And that's what I'm saying. When I told this person that, she said nobody else, I was speaking to her true feelings. She doesn't want to uproot her life. She doesn't want to do all that.
That's the difference. If it's her dream to uproot her life, there is no judgment in that. If it is not her dream to do that and everybody else is pushing it on her or comparing or judging or making her feel compelled to do that, that's where the problem is. You're not actually getting unstuck because you chase someone else's dream. Hear me out.
No, but when they're talking to her, they're not asking her, when they're advising or whatever, they're not finding out what does she truly want. Really what's valuable to her.
It's other people's opinions. And so that goes back to the story I was telling about.
But I'm saying listening.
Right. Right. But what I'm talking about is like the story I told was I was chasing a dream and I wanted to uproot my community in the sense that because I knew that the outcome would be better than what I had, even though I was losing something that I had. That was my choice. Nobody was comparing. Nobody was judging. Nobody was not listening to me. In the case of your person, if she would have said, this is my dream, I will feel so unsettled in life if I don't chase this opportunity, then great, support her in doing that. But if people are putting that on her and making her feel that way, then that's not really her dream. It's not.
Well, I think it's what we're missing a point here. It's a question about like values and what does society value. And it's not particular people pushing something, but it's the societal value of what makes a person valuable in the society. And that's coming up, I think, very much in certain conversations in this country. And what I'm saying is that narrative, I think, has to change about what is actually valuable to us. Is community valuable to us? Is, making a lot of money? Is having certain stature? What? And that is also individual that people need to decide,
Well, and I think it's an individual decision. I mean, certainly society wants you to be, contributing. They want you to be wealthy. They want you to have all these things. And so there is a pressure. So it might not be individuals that are pushing this message on her. It could be societal expectations that are doing that. But the bottom line is if she's chasing this dream and uprooting things because of something that's not coming from inside of her that she truly wants, that's where it becomes, that's not where you're getting unstuck. You weren't stuck. Right. If you're not stuck and you're going out taking a risk, it's not getting unstuck. It's just changing your life, and in my case, I felt unstuck. I'd always wanted to be a professor, or I felt stuck. I wanted to be a professor.
Stuck, right.
And I don't care what societal expectations were or not. I left a corporate job where I was making more money, and I left to go. And I mean, I had a lot of expectations on me. Like, I felt really bad. Like, what kind of parent would leave their kid behind? What kind of a parent or what kind of person would leave their partner behind? What kind of person would go and just do this? And I felt like it was, but I was like, I have to chase.
But why? Because you were driven?
No, because I'd always wanted it. It wasn't because everybody else in the world was telling me, or I felt.
Was there no professor job available closer to you?
No, there's none. They don't have my field of study in the state. And so I had to go find it in so few places. And so I found it, and I found somebody who would offer me a gig. And, but I knew that if I didn't do it, then I would feel stuck. I would feel stuck. I would be resentful. And I remember I've always said this. I said, I am a better parent because I did that. I wasn't a worse parent. I had to go away to come home physically, metaphorically, because I am.
But you came home a lot. I mean, you really commuted. Basically.
Physically, I did. Like, I did come home.
And you had one child. I mean, and that's the thing for each person. Like, can they do something? Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's circumstances around it and there's situation. But in reality, what I was saying is emotionally, I needed to go away because if I would have stayed to have half custody of my kid, I would have become resentful that I didn't get to chase this dream, and I would have felt emotionally stuck. And I never wanted to feel that way. And I could feel my whole self in my dream and come back emotionally to her as a parent. And so,
okay, so looking back now, would you make the same choice?
100%. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. And intuitively, I knew it was. Like, as soon as I got the offer, I knew that's where I was supposed to go. It was rough. Don't get me wrong. Those 3 years were really tough. But it worked, and I have the life that I want, and I knew it was the right decision. But that's the thing. There's this concept called moral luck that I think is really interesting. Moral luck basically says it's like hindsight is 20/20. It's this idea that if we make a decision, say we make a really good decision, like a really good one, but the circumstances, the outcome is bad, we often say that was a bad decision. And the reverse happens. We're like, well, if I make a really bad decision, but the outcome is fine, then I often deem it in my head like a good decision. Like, I went cliff diving.
Say that again.
Okay.
Wait. So say it again.
So if you say you make a really, really bad decision, like you go cliff diving, right? Okay. And you go and you're barely missing these rocks. It's a very dangerous place to go cliff diving. It's just a bad decision.
Out. Right.
But then you don't die. Nothing bad happens to you. Then you don't look back at it and think it was a bad decision because nothing bad happened to you. Same thing goes for like good decisions. You could make a really great informed decision and just things don't line up the way they're supposed to. Like, you made a great decision to start your own business. Everything was perfectly lined up. And then this is what happened to my brother. And then he did this in 2008, 2009. And then the economy fell out from under us. And so Was it a good decision? Yeah, it was a great decision, but it had a bad outcome. So now you look back and you're like, it was a really bad decision to start my own business. No, it wasn't a bad decision. So sometimes the outcome really determines our perception of whether something was good or not. So if you would have asked me that question, was it a good decision? And I had maybe lasted a couple of years there, and now I was, not working in anything that was fulfilling to me, I'd say that was a bad decision. But it had a good outcome, so it was a good decision, right?
Right. Yeah. That's very interesting because I think people do look at their life. That's what I was talking to that person about today because people imbue what happens with things with a lot, I don't know how to say this, like people blame stuff, like they put the blame in the wrong place, right? So for your brother, the blame is on the economy, and for all of his decision making was right, but why they can't see that? And I think they tank themselves, right? That's why I think when you're making big decisions, you really have to have somebody helping you. I mean, people, we're just relying on yourself or not having somebody to run things by. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And backup plans or, other considerations, contingency ideas, all of that. But the other thing too is we'll also never know. I'm assuming my brother made a bunch of great decisions, right? But because the economy tanked his business, we'll never know if he made a series of bad decisions either. And that's the part about it, is it's really hard because the outcome doesn't always follow the decision. And so when we're in these stuck positions, we want to go chase our dreams and we go out there and they either work or they don't work. Sometimes it's not attributed to our effort or our skills or our investment. It's like something else happened. And then we become...
COVID. Look at how COVID ruined so many things for so many people.
Oh, so many small businesses closed. Does it mean that those small businesses weren't thriving or weren't running great? Exactly. So it's that's the hard part about the dreamless piece that we're talking about is you take that chance. You take that chance of these external things. And like you're talking about with that person is, you take that chance that you leave something good behind, especially if you're doing it not for your own internal happiness, right?
And she had described having already done this once and going to a different state and being absolutely miserable and her marriage taking a toll and her family being sad. And the reason we started talking is because her family said, if you leave, we're going to be devastated, and her friends, And I'm like, so is it worth it to then get into a profession where you're like,
I mean, that's the big question we all have to ask ourselves when we chase our dreams, right? Are we running to something or are we running from something? Right? Mm-hmm. And is someone telling us to do it?
Well, I mean, I'd like to go to medical school, but I'm 55 years old and I'd have to pay for it. Is that realistic? You know what I mean? That's one of my dreams. I mean, I started out in pre-med, but I was a big animal rights activist. I don't want to do dissecting. And, had I continued on with that path, I'd be an ER doctor now, right? So I'm like, do I want to do that now? I mean, I can, but at what cost, right? I mean, I have a ton of dreams. That's the thing for me. I have so many dreams. It's okay, well, let me move on to that one.
I mean, that's the thing. Some people say that was your only dream, right? And then you did chase it down, and then all of a sudden you're under a ton of student loans and you're interning and you're like, I hate this. And I've seen that happen a lot with people who want to go into teaching. They love it. That's their only dream. Since they were a little kid, they wanted to be a teacher.
Right.
And then they go to college and then they do student teaching and they're like, oh, heck no, get me out of the classroom. And then they transfer over into my major in organizational leadership, some of them, because it's not a fit. And it's really good that they had that experience. It's not bad that they left the major. It's good if they realize that's not a good fit, because teaching is one of those where don't stay if it's not a good fit.
Well, but also the money that you put in, even if something is a good fit or it's nice or whatever. I mean, I got hit by a car the second day of law school that paid off my law school. Would I feel so differently about law school if I was paying on loans for years? Yes. I mean, in a sense, I got very lucky getting hit by that car, even though I got very, very injured. I always felt like law school was a wash for me, but I would feel very differently, and I would have probably lived my life totally differently if I had a ton of loans to pay. So also, I think, what is a dream and what is the cost of a dream?
Exactly.
I think we have to look at that, right?
And only
Like,
we can answer that. Like,
right. But we want help. We want other
yes,
people to talk to us and help us,
we
you
want,
know?
we want guidance, but like, I had a lot of people tell me, to not go to do a professor thing. Don't go. You're making good money. You have it made. You're in a great situation. And I remember, so it wasn't like I was talking through the situation with them. They were just giving me an unsolicited opinion. And so the cost of that dream was a lot, but the advantage or the recoup that I could get later was significantly higher than where I was. And that was a risk that I needed to take for myself. I would have been mad if I didn't. But if other people had told me to do something else, that wouldn't have been chasing my dream. So, okay.
I think but you have to figure out the cost. You have to do a cost benefit analysis. And I think it's disingenuous to say that people don't have to. Like when people are like, just pursue your dream at all costs. I don't agree.
No, I don't either. You have to see what the costs are, but it's okay if the costs are greater than the rewards initially, right? Like for me, I knew that if I paid my dues for a couple of years, I was going to eventually get tenure. I was hoping that I'd eventually get to,
And did you enjoy that job while you were the first part of your job? I mean, did you enjoy it?
Yeah, there were parts of it I enjoyed. I just didn't enjoy living far away from everybody that I loved, and that was hard. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoy it more now. But it was a cost that I had I knew that the costs were going to be greater than the rewards the first few years, and they were. But I also knew that I had the potential to make them higher, way higher. The rewards were going to be way higher than if I stayed where I was. So
you went in it with realistic eyes, and you knew that you were giving up a more lucrative thing, and you knew that you were going to make sacrifices. So yes. I think that's the thing. As long as you're doing the cost benefit analysis and you're like, my happiness, my future happiness is worth this much more. And these are things that I'm going to have to suck up for this time.
Exactly, right. Because as we talk about this, tying it back to being unstuck, is sometimes it isn't that you are in a bad situation and then you unstick and you move to a good situation. In my case, I was in a good situation and I unstuck to move to a lesser situation because I knew that in the long term it would be a much greater situation. But I play me, Tracy, I play the long game better than almost anyone I've ever met in my life. And I get almost everything that I want because I invest early and I'm patient. And I'm not patient with a lot of things, but I'm very patient when it comes to this kind of stuff.
But also you're aware of what you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
the clarity.
Yeah. You need clarity.
Right.
You need clarity in this process.
Exactly. So I think if we were to tie it back to these things about why we stay stuck, we've talked about fear of failure, fear of being dreamless. This is really a lot of the fear of judgment, right? This fear of being judged from other people, judging yourself. Did I make the right choice? But I also think we're tapping into the next one, which is the fear of losing something. Like you're talking about, like all of a sudden you'd be piled under student loans for medical school. You're losing your financial freedom by doing that. Right. Then you're stuck working as a doctor because it's the only thing that can pay those loans off until you're 80 years old. So that fear of losing something. So maybe getting unstuck is getting unstuck from that dream, not getting unstuck from your circumstance, saying, okay, that's just, I keep fantasizing about this dream, but in reality, I wouldn't be happy because of all these other things. I've sort of put it on a pedestal, but in reality, that would not.
Well, the reality of, yes, going from being a 55-year-old with a lot of freedom of time and, travel and doing the things I want to do, then to being like a student, then to having loans, to all of that. Like, would that really be a good trade-off? No, right. Maybe could I just go work one shift a week at an ER and be doctor adjacent and watch what they're doing? Would that satisfy my desire for that?
Or even think about it. What draws you to wanting to be a doctor is your want and desire to heal people. Does it need to be in the medical profession as a doctor where you need that much training and stuff? Could it be in some of the other things you're exploring, like coaching or counseling or, those things? Can you also be a healer? Right.
Or could I become a wilderness EMT and could that be satisfying? Right.
Exactly. Right. And it may be even more satisfying. It's just, you have to take it down to sometimes we think things are dreams because they look good or sound good. But then when you really think about them, the lifestyle or, a lot of people say, why don't you work in corporate? You could make a lot more money. I'm like, because I'd be working 80 hours a week and I don't want it. I don't want that life. And so, so the idea is what is the dream? Is the dream something, or is the dream a feeling, right? The dream is a feeling. It's the feeling of being financially secure, financially free, at peace, happy, values aligned, the ability to have time when I need it and I want it, the commitment to family and community. So these are the things that are important. And if something doesn't align with that, is it really my dream?
Right.
My dream is to have those things. But if I find a random job and I'm like, I want to do that, but that's not getting unstuck. That's sticking yourself even more outside of what you want.
Exactly. This is why my medical school example is so perfect at this age, right? It's like my dream is to have a certain lifestyle and also to be able to be, you know, dabble in all these other things. And so putting myself, like even going back to the police department, I wouldn't be able to express myself openly on social media. I would have to curb a lot of the things that are really important to me. And it's like, oh, is really being able to express yourself on Facebook more important than a career and a pension? Well, for me, it is, right? For some people, it's not, but for me, it is. So I think you have to like take into account all of those variables.
Right, right. And as you're talking too, you know, we talked in the other episode that we've done on being stuck or stagnant. And sometimes when people feel stagnant, right, they're not necessarily stuck, but then they run to something else that actually sticks them, right? As you're talking about, like right now, maybe you're feeling stagnant, you're feeling unsure about which direction you're going, but you're not technically stuck. And if you were to run right to the police department or right to, you know, medical school, you're going to end up getting yourself way stuck.
Yeah, I would be so stuck.
So the other way around, it's like not just getting unstuck, but trying to avoid making yourself stuck for no reason, right? Like
for a reason, but then it ends up being that your life isn't as good. I mean, I really like the life I have. Like I was up until midnight on the phone with somebody, you know what I mean? And like I can do that.
Yeah, I know.
I couldn't do that if I was working a 12-hour shift and not being allowed out. But could I become a wilderness EMT while I'm doing writing, while I'm doing podcasting, while I'm doing some legal work? Yeah. And then I can have an all-around better life. And it is interesting because I think if you're talking about getting unstuck and going to something else, you really have to look at like, what is the lifestyle of the people doing what is your dream? You know?
Right. Exactly.
Is that truly what you want?
Right. Yes, yes. So, all right, let's look at the last couple here in the last few minutes that we have. So we talked about the fear of losing something, right? Like leaving something behind that was better maybe than what you had before, right? So you're afraid of that. And that should be a fear. I don't know if that should keep you stuck in something, but it should give you awareness of what you're giving up. But another thing, and we sort of talked a little bit about this, is people's self-limiting beliefs. Sometimes people won't get unstuck because they're afraid they're never going to find a better partner than the one they have, even though the one they have doesn't feel like a great match. They'd rather be content than fulfilled, than take the chance of being fulfilled because they might not be, right? Like they might get out there and realize, oh gosh, there's no one. Or maybe they, you know, don't want to go try for another job because they don't think that they're good enough or smart enough, so they stay in the job that they're in. And so a lot of times we underestimate our own abilities. Like you're talking about skills, right? Like skills is one of the easiest things to overcome. If you don't have them, you just go get trained on them. If you want to be a better marketer, take some marketing classes or watch some YouTube videos or get someone to mentor you on marketing and teach you, be an apprentice, do some, you know.
I mean, there are so many free resources out there, but I don't know if that's what it's about. Like the self-limiting beliefs, like those are very hard to overcome. And those are some serious long-term things that people have that therapy would be helpful with, because those come from childhood. They come from jobs. Like I wrote a novel. I can't find it. I've seen it once or twice. Like it's digital somewhere. I just can't remember where I've stored it. And I did not do anything with it I still haven't, because I felt that the people I used to work with would judge me for what I wrote. And I always had this attitude that I don't let those jerks bother me. Like, and when I worked with them, I was like, you're a bunch of jerks and you're not going to affect my life. And then I realized 10 to 15 years later, I wasn't doing something. I wasn't putting something out there because I was worried about their judgment. And that was truly shocking for me. And now I would do something with it, but I can't find it. So like I limited myself based on what I thought other people would think of me.
That was so long ago.
Yeah, but that's what most people's lives. Childhood, I got that job when I was very, very young. I suffered a lot of like obscene and rude and awful things that people said to me and trying to cut me down. That was the culture, was to try to make you feel as small as, could be. And so I always was like, that didn't affect me. I'm not like that. I was super tough. And then I was like, oh my God, that really got in my mind. That really was stuck in there. And that is everybody's childhood with non-great role models and support people.
Yes, I agree. And it can even happen later than childhood. I remember one of my first bosses told me that I had chosen the wrong career field and that I took no initiative. Can you imagine someone saying that? Don't take initiative.
No. Where's that person now? Let's go find them.
Oh, I know where they are.
Well, let's go call them.
And so
let's ambush them.
Yes, exactly. That I was in the wrong field and that I needed to go find a new career field. And I remember that could have turned into a self-limiting belief. And, I could have opted to not move forward. But at the same time, I was like, oh, heck no. So then what did I do? I go and, I teach in this profession now. And I tell people that don't let anyone stop you or tell you you're not good enough. Like,
right.
You keep going out there and putting yourself out there. And, but that could, these are experiences that, people can.
Yeah, they're very formative. I mean, there's
Yep.
If you ever watch 30-30 or whatever it is about behind the scenes on sports, either the people had super supportive people that just lifted them up and that brought them, like Caitlin Clark with that super supportive family. Her parents are at every game. Like she can't say I did this all on my own. She didn't. She had a lot of support. But then you look at the people who literally everybody was against them, Right. You watch certain movies or you look at documentaries and these people, they had people kicking them down at every step of the way. I just watched one on the plane home from Thailand. Oh, this boxer where everything in her life, she's a U.S. Olympic boxer, back-to-back gold medals. And everything in her life was set up to not get her there. And so your beliefs can be imposed on you by others and or yourself.
Right.
And you can overcome them or not.
You can use them as a way to propel yourself. I remember that when I interviewed for one job, and I wrote about this on Facebook, I interviewed for this one job a little over a decade ago, and it was for a faculty job, and the dean was kind of, I don't know, he was a little dismissive of my ability to write and publish and was kind of skeptical. And I was like, no. I already have a book or whatever. And he's like, yeah, okay. And I said, I will have 10 books published in 10 years. And he's like, whatever. He just sort of blew it off. And I didn't get the job, but guess what I did? I
published 10 books in the 10 years.
I published 11. And then I posted it all over.
Did you send him all of them?
No, that's funny. People ask me, and then I was like, no, he can buy them on Amazon. I'm not going to pay.
You
could
send him a list of them.
I could.
Say, remember when you told me I couldn't do it? But see, some people are driven by that, right?
Right. Too much of it would be a lot. But he said that, and not that I wouldn't have published all those books, but it did help me kind of like propel me a little bit. And not that I would ever endorse anybody coaching someone like that, because I don't think it's useful. But I did feel like I needed to almost spite him a little bit and be like,
well, and it matters who it comes from, right? So if you got a good foundation in life and people were supportive of you and some rando says that to you or some person you're interviewing with, it's on you, which I think is the work that every person needs to do in therapy, is how am I going to take the things that other people do to me and what am I going to do with those internally? Am I going to take that internally and let it really affect me? And I thought that the stuff on the police department wasn't affecting me until 15 years down the road. I was limiting myself from publishing a really good book because I was worried about what they would say.
Right, but didn't realize that until it came out in some other context.
Right.
Yeah, but you're right. If you hear this all the time and you're beat down, it just makes it that much harder to overcome. I had had a lot of encouraging people, so this was some random guy, and then I had this, several years earlier, a decade or so earlier, someone else tell me this wasn't the right profession. And by the time I had gotten to the next interview with the interview with this guy, I'd already known it was the right profession. So I didn't.
But people who say those things to people, there's something wrong with them, and that's what I say to people all the time when they tell you this. It's like, who I dealt with this recently. I forget what it was, but somebody really putting somebody else down. And I'm like, who's that person? Who is that person to tell you? There's nobody better on this planet than me. Nobody. I don't care how rich you are. I don't care what, your title is. It doesn't matter. Those are superficial things.
Right.
And so every person has to value themselves, but that is very hard work, and it has to be done usually in therapy, because people really, I think self-limiting beliefs are probably the biggest thing that keep people from achieving what they want to achieve.
Yes. And then what happens is you have those beliefs from your childhood, and then you have those beliefs from your, then you're growing up, your young adulthood, whatever it is, and they're continuing to be reinforced. And then sometimes what happens is we listen to people. We even solicit advice from people knowing that they're going to tell us things that are going to reinforce those self-limiting beliefs. Like, should I go take this job? And you know that by telling maybe one of your parents, they're not going to support it. You tell them anyways, and they tell you, no, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, whatever it is that they tell you. But sometimes people seek that out because they feel comfortable with their self-limiting beliefs, because it's a really good excuse to not go and get unstuck. It's like, okay, well, I'm not smart enough for that. So, as devastating as it is that message is within them, it gives them a reason to stay stuck. And then seeking it out from other people. Like, I know exactly what my dad's going to say, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. And then when my dad tells me I'm not smart enough, I'm like, yep, that's true. I'm not smart enough. So, but I think it's interesting because that's a little self-sabotaging. So not only do we internalize these beliefs, we seek them out sometimes just to give ourselves reason to not get unstuck. So, okay, last one. Sometimes people don't get unstuck because it's just simply overwhelming to make a change. It's like, oh, I can't imagine moving. I hate my house or something, but I just can't move. Or, I don't want to leave my job because I don't love it, but it's just too much to think about applying for jobs. People say this with relationships. I don't want to get divorced because, oh my gosh, I don't want to have to go through that whole process. Listen to our divorce episodes and you'll know why. I'll just stay in this unfulfilling situation because I don't want to deal with the change. Have you ever had something like that where it feels just overwhelming?
No,
I didn't think you did.
I take on overwhelming stuff, but I'm particularly suited for that. And I don't think a lot of people are. So then it's like, okay, we'll make little changes or do a little bit at a time.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of the solution to that, but it is true. I mean, life is overwhelming. Mm-hmm. I'll never move again. I will never move this furniture from this house again.
I hear that. People say that.
I have to get rid of this couch because the puppy chewed it all up. And I'm like, I'll just dump it, right?
But it's like people say, this isn't a good time to go looking for a new job, or this isn't a good time to start dating. And some of that's realistic, right? There's other things going on, and that's important. But sometimes it's like we say that for a long time, like for 15 years. It's just not a good time to start dating again,
Right.
Well, okay, if you like being single, that's one thing. But if you really think that it's not a good time because you're overwhelmed by it, maybe sit with that for a second. Right?
Yeah, or just chunk it up, man.
I know. Chunking is the best, right? You don't have to like rip the Band-Aid off. I mean,
you're a big fan of that.
I know. I do chunk a lot of things. But then some things I'm also not afraid of change. I will make change. We'll uproot things and go do things. But some people, it's really scary, especially something like a divorce, right? You initiate a divorce. I remember when my mom it wasn't even my mom. After my mom's partner had passed away, it wasn't even a divorce, but he had passed away. She was working for him and lived in his house. And so like the idea of that change was, oh my gosh, like I lost my partner, but I lost my job and I lost my house. And that's like the same thing with divorce. It's like, I don't want to leave because then then I'm going to lose where I'm living. I'm going to lose my financial stream. I'm going to lose my ability to see my kids full time. And so you're like, oh gosh, I'm overwhelmed. I don't want that, so I'm just going to stay here. And sometimes it's good that people make that choice. It's their choice to make. But sometimes people are like, heck yeah, bring it on. I want my new life to start.
Right. I just talked to a client today who's moving out next week, and she's very excited. And she's moving out of her marital home, and she's going to be in this place, that's an apartment, and she's actually psyched. And she wasn't months ago, but now she's ready. She said, I'm just ready. And she said a friend came over and said she always seems nervous in the marital home and on edge. And she's like, yeah, I am. I always feel like I'm being recorded or, and the spouse is out of there. But when she moves out, he's moving back in, but she's going to be in a new place. And she's like, I'm just ready for everything to restart. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's been overwhelming and it's been months. And, if you don't fight the hypo, if you just accept what is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're really unhappy, what is that pain threshold? Like at some point you'll make changes when the pain of staying stuck is greater than the pain of making the changes, you'll make the change.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So let's end with one thing. You're going through a change right now or trying to get unstuck from kind of your career trajectory.
Yes.
So can you share with us a little bit about if there's anything that had been holding you back from making the change to stop litigating as a lawyer? What do you think of the things maybe we talked about today were some of the biggest influences in holding you back?
From making the change?
Yeah, because now you're
fear
in the process
of losing money, reputation, that, and relationship with the firm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was afraid if I did it too soon or tanked it, that I also was like, can I learn to do this? And then I realized over time, no, and I don't want to. I'd rather literally do the work in the elephant kitchen in Thailand for the rest of my life and find intellectual stimulation elsewhere on my off time or on a podcast while I'm working. So I was afraid of all those things, of losing money, reputation, relationship.
And how do you feel like are those real fears? Are they some of them fabricated in your head or blown up in your head? What do you think?
They were 100% real fears, but I'm addressing each one head on, and we can talk about that as we go further,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I did wake up at 5:30 this morning and see on my calendar that I have a presentation to give today. And I had to do a PowerPoint at 5:30 this morning about a topic. And while I was doing it, I thought, this is really helpful. It's helpful for me to go through this, but also it's like, I don't want that life either where suddenly I'm under the gun, which is litigation all the time.
Yep.
That's how it is with each case. So I'm going to chunk it out and we can talk about that. Like, how am I going to do it? Because this time in my life, I'm chunking it out.
Yeah. And you're addressing the fears that are the real fears instead of addressing things that aren't fears. Like what has been holding you back. So like you said, if the pain is too much to stay stuck, you'll find a way to get unstuck. And
it was, and you can tell I've already lost weight. I feel better. I don't feel like I'm going to have a heart attack at all. My head doesn't feel like it's going to explode. I feel like my blood pressure has gone back to what it normally is. And I can physically tell.
Yes. Well, there's the physical manifestation of what stuckness feels like and what it's like to get unstuck. So awesome. Well, we have covered a lot of ground today, and we're going to continue this conversation throughout this season. So to all our listeners out there, until our next episode, go out there and rock those relationships. If you liked what you heard, check out our show notes for resources from today's episode. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram under Rock That Relationship, and go to our website at rockthatrelationship.com for updated episodes and more great information.
Thanks for listening. Now go rock those relationships.